We're going to get right in it today because we got a lot to chat about.
A French researcher was denied visa due to his opinions on Donald Trump. There has been a lot of misinformation over the years.
Oh boy. You know what? We're going to go back and forth with this. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 Innovation Award winner, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads, fathers, and male caregivers that's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And being part of that movement, the team has reached out directly and indirectly to over 500,000 dads, fathers, and male caregivers. And as always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And we are hanging out on Black Canada Talking, Sunday, February 22nd. It is getting a little bit warmer in the Toronto area, but it's supposed to die down again. And as always, we are hanging out with our good friend, Cesar Ndema-Moussa. What is up, Cesar? How you doing?
Dr. Vibe, brothers and sisters and allies, thank you for having me. I'm okay, Dr. Vibe. I'm okay. Thank you. What about you? How are you doing?
Doing fine. Just doing inch by inch to cinch, yard by yard is too hard, but you know, we're getting through it. We're fighting the good fight. You know what I'm saying? We're fighting the good fight. So
absolutely. And Dr. Vibe, I don't know if you heard, you were talking about the weather. Apparently, there's a major blizzard about to hit the northeast, but I don't know if it's gonna hit us over here.
No, we're not. You and I, we're not gonna get it. You're in Ottawa, where I'm trying to get it. But you know what? Aisha from Aisha and Lala, they're getting hit. Yeah. They are getting hit, like New York, Connecticut, the Northeast United States is getting hit. I think, but we've had enough of snow for a while. I think
absolutely.
We've had more than enough. So we're going to get right to it today. We're not going to do any break because Cesar has a hard stop at quarter after the hour. So there's a lot of stuff we have to get covered. So let's get to our housekeeping first. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Please like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Substack if you want to advertise your business, product, or service on our show. Please feel free to email me at dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. Also, Indie Soup TV, our good friend Dr. Tachi, who is the power behind Indie Soup TV, independent content creators platform. She runs it out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. About 25 independent content creators. I am one of them. And over 28,000 YouTube subscribers in 2.5 years. That makes subscribers-wise, her site, YouTube channel is one of the top 4% of all YouTube channels. So make sure you check it out. And you also see a lot of the content there. Most importantly, if you want to get a hold of Cesar, he's at president@rootsandculturecanada.com, Facebook, Cesar Remy Emery. And we also have a comment. So someone has jumped in. Destiny Savory says, good evening. So good evening to you, Destiny Savory. Good to have you here. And we're going to get right to it. We're going to get right to Cesar's first conversation piece. Jeneroux betrays Poilievre. Carney's big win. Go for it.
Dr. Vibe, I would not call that a betrayal. Allow me to explain. Why would Mr. Poilievre, the leader of the opposition in Canada, Canada's federal parliament, why would he have been surprised? There was already talk of a weakened leadership despite his 87% approval vote at the leadership summit, I think in Edmonton, end of January. But it was already there in the air and beyond MP Jeneroux crossing the aisle to go to the Liberal. There are still talks about likely other conservatives crossing the aisle. And even despite that, there are by-elections that are coming in which the Liberals are expected to win. So this is part of the political games because, let's be honest, if Mr. Poilievre is so upset about Jeneroux crossing the aisle, I would ask him the question, what is it that he did when he got defeated in his own riding by Mr. Bruce Fanjoy, and then he went to Alberta to get a safe riding. Isn't that the same thing? Political maneuvering for one's interest. That's what Mr. Jeneroux did. However, let us be honest. The leadership of Mr. Poilievre, his style of leadership, and also the fact that he has been seen unable to take a strong stance regarding Trump's attack on Canada is playing against him. We are in Canada talking about Canadian unity, elbows up. Unfortunately, our women's and men's hockey teams have lost, both in finals, both in overtimes, both by score 2-1. But still, Mr. Poilievre has been seen quite weak on the Canadian patriotic side. So, to what extent is he going to truly blame one of his MPs for crossing the aisle in Parliament with someone, Carney, who has greatly been elected for his standing up to Donald Trump in terms of domestic policies, aka tariffs and all that, but also at the international stage in which, and we will talk about it later, the Davos speech of Mark Carney is said by all that it is historic. So, in this conversation, who truly is Mr. Poilievre? We talk about Donald Trump being a lame duck president in terms of the midterms coming, but despite an 87% approval support from his own delegates, Mr. Poilievre is looking like a lame duck opposition leader. He's unable to keep the loyalty in his own camp because he is unable to show himself as a strong alternative. This is less about Mark Carney and even less about Mr. Jeneroux. Look at it the other way around. He had, I'm having a memory blank, the MP Javing, the one who went to see J.D. Vance at the White House.
Oh, Jamil Giovanni.
Jamil Giovanni. There you go. He took his own initiative, without consultation of the chief, to go see the vice president of the United States and come back with borderline a message of peace, like Chamberlain in 1938, prior to World War II, from Hitler, that, Trump loves Canada and that, it's the Canadians who have to make changes. Come on, this is a lame duck opposition leader. If we can just act anywhere around you.
Were you surprised that Mr. Poilievre won such a large percentage on his leadership question on the party?
I wasn't surprised, but it is true that many analysts were surprised. And I'm not trying to spin it. I wasn't surprised that he won and by such a majority, and I would not have been surprised if he had been defeated by a crushing majority. The point that I'm saying in this is we are talking about a conservative party that literally last year was seen high flying with a 40 points lead over Justin Trudeau's Liberal government. It melted away following the election of Trump and his rhetoric in regard to Canada as the 51st state and the tariffs, etc., since November of 2024. So this is a party which kind of has the Republicans in the US, but even the Democrats truly has lost that backbone that you could make relatively viable predictions about outcomes within. Because I think they are still in the trauma of that. How do you lose? Dr. Vibe, help me with the data here. If I'm not mistaken, it was a 20 to 30 points lead, and even in some were even talking about 40 points.
Yeah.
Unity.
Yeah.
How do you lead that? It was a historic loss, furthered by the fact that the own leader, Poilievre, got defeated in his own riding since his mid-20s, and yet he remained. Jagmeet Singh left. Jagmeet Singh bowed out honorably. So, no, I'm not surprised. But at the same time, like I'm saying, I'm not surprised that Mr. Jeneroux left. This is a sinking ship. And this is not a sinking ship, aka the rats are jumping ship, as many people say. No, this is a sinking ship, aka any man, woman, and child wants to stay alive. So yes, they are jumping ship as they should. It's not surprising.
Okay. Would love to go deeper, but our time is constrained, and I know you really want to dig into the next two conversation pieces. So what we're going to do, we're going to show you a video to introduce our next conversation piece, and let's get it up now.
Today, we're diving into a game changer in global politics, President Trump's Donroe Doctrine. It's blowing up headlines after the U.S. strikes in Venezuela and Maduro's capture. Is this a bold reclaiming of American power or a risky power grab? Let's break it down. What it is, where it came from, and why the world should care. Buckle up. This is Trump's Monroe Doctrine 2.0. Picture 1823. President James Monroe draws a line in the sand telling Europe to back off the Americas. No more colonies or interference here. It was about spheres of influence. America's backyard stays ours, Europe stays theirs. Fast forward to Trump's second term, he rebrands it the Donroe Doctrine, matching his name with Monroe's. After Operation Absolute Resolve nabbed Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro on January 3, 2026, Trump declared, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. It's not just talk. Think Gulf of Mexico renamed Gulf of America. Pushes for Canada as the 51st state, tariffs on neighbors, and threats to Colombia's petro. Key actions so far. Venezuela. U.S. forces strike drug boats, arrest Maduro, State Department tweets. This is OUR hemisphere. Trump eyes its oil to fuel U.S. stability. North America. Executive order renames the Gulf. Troops offered to Mexico, declined. Military buildup in Puerto Rico, Canada, 51st state rhetoric. Broader. National security strategy vows a Trump corollary, block China and Russia from gaining footholds, revive gunboat diplomacy against threats. Supporters cheer it as restoring U.S. primacy against foreign meddling. Critics warn it greenlights intervention anywhere instability hurts America, echoing Teddy Roosevelt's aggressive spin on Monroe. What it means for the world. For Latin America, expect more. U.S. muscle strikes on cartels, resource grabs, stability on Washington's terms. Europe, Trump's ditching multilateralism like NATO for America first in our hemisphere, leaving allies edgy. China and Russia lose playgrounds in Venezuela or Panama Canal plays. Globally, it redraws power maps. U.S. as unchallenged boss of the Americas, but at what cost to sovereignty and alliances? As Trump puts it, we've greatly surpassed Monroe, now it's Donroe time. The Donroe Doctrine isn't history, it's happening now, reshaping borders and balances. What do you think, smart strategy or imperial overreach?
All right. Our second conversation piece, 47's Donroe Doctrine, explain what it means for the world. And also, Cesar, if you can include that, I want you to give your commentary on what the Supreme Court did this past Friday. So go for it.
First, Dr. Vibe, that was an excellent video. That was, let us do justice to the person who created the video, and to your team, absolutely. Now, why is it that I wanted to be talk about the Supreme Court justice and in relation to, Marco Rubio's comment at the Munich Security Conference in terms of, neocolonialism 2.0, like recolonize Africa, aka, that Black General Bradley would give that talk to Congress in terms of African mineral resources, is because it's linked. We are seeing here the language of an empire that is on the decline, and as such, in French, it is called les soubresauts de l'Empire. Basically, the last shaking up, the last flexing, the last, acting tough of an empire. Let's be careful. I am not here claiming America or the American empire is going to disappear in 5 or 10 years. That's not it at all. And as I've always said, I don't want anyone to think I'm a hypocrite. I've always said it. If aliens come on Earth to invade, enslave, colonize us, we will all wish to have a strong and coherent U.S. Army. So let's not be hypocrites. Now, back to our topic. The U.S. Supreme Court Justice, the Supreme Court Justice of Justice Roberts, by a decision of 6-3, striking down Trump's tariff overwhelmingly because done in disregard of Congress, the very weak Republican Congress led by Speaker Mike Johnson, is a testament to the Donald Trump, who thought he was infallible, who thought he had no restraints on his presidential powers. And as such, as we see time and again in regards to the Epstein files, diversion and constant bringing back of that MAGA rhetoric. Understand, Trump's ideological doctrine, which doesn't really come from Trump, but from the Stephen Miller, and we have to be fair. Like, people sometimes like to say, the critics of Donald Trump like to paint him as some dumb person, uneducated. No, I disagree. You have to be careful. Just because someone does not seem to speak your intellectual language does not mean that they're dumb. Donald Trump, and I'm sorry, I forget the name, had a mentor in which the notions of white supremacy, but also of an America First policies were very much present. For those who don't understand, America First as an ideology goes back to the 1920s and 30s, and to put it very summarily, those were the opponents of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was, notably with his wife Eleanor Roosevelt, if I recall. I'm sorry, Dr. Vibe, I couldn't hear you.
Eleanor.
Yes, Eleanor. We're pushing for a more open / globalizing presence of America, which also meant forwarding the notions of human rights. It is notably the beginning of desegregation in the army under FDR. And for those who can be honest, this American government of Donald Trump is taking steps backwards, making America great again, when that passed, when segregation was the law. It was legal. So, back to our conversation. The Scottish decision, Supreme Court of the United States decision, is directly linked to this tough guy, America First language, Fortress America, indeed, in which Mark Carney's Davos speech about the international order having ended is relatively true, because guess what? This international order that apparently has ended, that is for the Western nations. For African, Caribbean nations and the so-called global South, it was always the law of the strongest, aka the Western / Northern nations that acted with impunity and at will. Let us not forget what happened to Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. It was outside of international order. And even when we look at Saddam Hussein back in 2003, no matter how we feel about Saddam Hussein, the fate that befell the Iraqis, over 1 million starved Iraqis, notably a great percentage of children, that was outside of international order. When we look at the situation in regards to Israel and Palestine, Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been condemned by if I'm not mistaken, the International Criminal Court, if not the International Court of Justice. I tend to often confuse the two, but he has been condemned. This is why New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani has clearly said, if Netanyahu lands in New York, he will have him arrested. That international order that has ended is for the Western nations. So when we have an African president such as Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, member of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the countermeasure to the Western hegemony of the world, when he reacts to Marco Rubio's Munich Security Conference speech by saying Africa must unite, Dr. Vibe, give me a quick second. He is doing nothing else but echoing, I'm sorry, I have one of those ring lights, Africa Unite, from Marcus Garvey when Ghana got its independence in 1957. This is the reality of a world in which it's not just multipolar, it's very predatory. The American government or Donald Trump, and this is where, as much as I criticize, I've always said it, if there's one thing we have to give to Donald Trump, is a sheer honesty and directness that he tends to have in regards to policies, speaking his mind, where politically talking, diplomatically talking, it would not be done. Marco Rubio basically gave a speech in Munich about neocolonization, notably of African resources. So it is for us as Africans, and when I say Africans, Dr. Vab, you know how my Pan-Africanism is. When I say African, I'm talking Black in the Caribbean, just as in terms of civil liberties in the Americas, from Canada to Brazil, and those Blacks that we tend to forget too often in Asia. It is for us to unite and to organize, because when you have an empire that's crumbling, allow me to show another book. And, I often forget to show books, but in the Black community, that expression, what's the best way to hide something from a Black person? Put it in a book. This book, Are We Rome? This book this book is from over 15 years ago, but analyzing the American empire. The undertitle, Are We Rome? The Fall of an Empire and the Fate of America. So, for those who want to understand the situation we're talking about, the fall of an empire and the need for Africa to unite. Africa, the Black world. And further to that, this is why the honor of being a delegate at the United Nations, as in April we're going to Geneva, and I will, as always, address white supremacy, but also address Black unity, Pan-Africanism. All of these are linked. You have an empire that's flexing, an empire that's terrified. Donald Trump is a believer of the Great Replacement theory, which is a right-wing extremist theory about whites being replaced by waves of brown and blacks migrations, and going back to that notion of the yellow peril, aka the Chinese population, and then now the Indian population. I can go on and on, but my friends, more than ever, and this is true all the time, it is ultimately up to us to organize. Outside of the three cancers of the Black psyche are always denounced: entertainment, consumerism, and religion. Religion of the white elite, Islam and Christianity, that they invaded us. We're talking about Africa Unite, Dr. Vibe. 90 to 95% of Africans, and by extension of Black people in the West, are Christians or Muslims. For most of them, the first identity is as per the religion. The same religions that were imposed by slavery and colonization. The weight of entertainment upon our Black psyche is poisoning, corrupting the minds of our young people in the classrooms, in the workplace, in relationships. I'm not trying to paint just a dire picture, but even when we look in terms of money power, I can't remember the specific number. I think it was a study that talked about $1.2 trillion, which was the economic weight of the African American community if it were an independent nation, aka the African American community would be part of the top 10, if not top 15 nations in the world. And yet, not just because of integration, but greatly because of our own mindset, we have an overwhelmingly represented population in poverty, and negative data. Just as Africa, with too many corrupt vassal leaders who are not there for the well-being of African and Caribbean peoples, but they are there to serve the white Western, white Arabs, and Russian as Chinese masters. It's a very dangerous time, very interesting time, but very dangerous time to be alive as history. We are living it in the present.
This is one of these episodes that says, I wish you didn't have to leave so early, but I think we have to come back to it at another time. Got some comments here. Someone says overreach. So I don't know if that's, I don't know what, you have to give us more of a context. Do you feel the Supreme Court overreach? Is 47 overreaching? We need more than that. President of the Cesar fan club, Michelle says, hello, family.
Hello,
and
Michelle.
Arnoud Ramad says, hello, good to have you on here. And also, Brian says, Malcolm X warned about liberals before his death.
But I will go further than that. Liberals are no more our friends than conservatives, just as conservatives are not more our enemies than liberals. We got to be careful. We got to be careful. An expression that I often use is that European royals enslaved Black peoples. European Democrats colonized Black people. So it's not a matter of these ones are our friends, these ones are our enemies. This is part of the reason why I clearly say, if you're a Pan-Africanist, you cannot ascribe to the left-right of politics, because left or right, what's the reality for Africa as a continent? What's the reality of Black nations worldwide? And what's the reality of Black communities worldwide? It is not to say that some administrations have not been good or better to us, but is that ultimately, just like the Chinese community, independently of who's in power, FUBU, for us by us, it is us who must free and work on our own liberation, independently of who's in power. Harriet Tubman did not look for who was the president of the United States. She acted. She took measures. The Black Panthers were not wondering, like, are we in California or are we in Texas? Marcus Garvey, the greatest Pan-Africanist of all time, he wasn't there wondering, are we in the 20s? Maybe we should wait in the 1930s. No. Up to us.
Before we move into our next, we have someone commenting here. Black peoples sold Black peoples into slavery. Is that true?
That is an interesting comment. And I want our people to be careful. Yes, from what I see on the screen, Stacy is a white person, but I don't want her to be attacked for these comments. Let us take the time to educate ourselves, because many Black people also believe this. There is, people can see, I forget her name, but there is a Florida state representative who had said, who had thanked God for taking her out of Africa, or she would be basically praying to a tree. So, Stacy, it is not exact that Black people sold Black peoples into slavery. This is a very broad way of saying this, just as to claim, for example, that women are responsible for rape if they wear a short skirt. That is not true. What happened is that, indeed, there were African tribes and kingdoms that participated in the slave trade by capturing other Africans and selling them. But why did they do it? What was the alternative? They would have been the ones enslaved. They did not do it out of sheer will or intent, when clearly they knew if they didn't do it, they would have been the one enslaved. A perfect example, and you can see this in the Book of Negroes, just as in other slave narratives, it is clearly explained by Africans who have been enslaved themselves, how the surprise for many of them to find themselves enslaved in the Americas with people who did sell them into slavery. Because ultimately the slave trade was not about, this is a good tribe, aka just like in the Americas. How many people know that in America, the 5 indigenous tribes called the civilized tribes were so called because they were complicit with whites in enslaving black people. So what happens here? It is not correct to say black people sold black people into slavery. This is a way to escape so-called white guilt, in the same way as men claiming that a woman got raped because she was twerking, or she had a short skirt, or she was drunk. This is blaming the victim. If you put people in a situation in which they don't participate into the slave trade, they're the ones who end up being enslaved, you are coercing them in a very rational in which they clearly understand, if I don't sell my neighbor and his family to slavery, it's going to be my family. Stacy, your own ancestors in Europe went through this in regarding to serfdom, in regarding to wars and other conflict, in regarding to, example, France, German occupation, so many examples. It's a human tragedy. I myself, I've never said this before, so Dr. Vibe does not know what I'm going to say. I myself am a descendant of an African tribe that was a slave selling tribe to the Europeans. I am a descendant of those Africans who captured other Africans. But I'm also a descendant of that tribe that fought against colonization, as they came to realize that ultimately the white European as American project was to enslave blacks purely for the color of the skin, not because of tribes or whatever other affiliations. And I mean, let's be honest, if we go, when white people, and I'm saying white people not to basically aim at Stacey, but I'm speaking generally, when white people or some white people like to say this, I like to remind them there are also Jewish people who sold other Jewish people to the Nazi. Do they dare to talk about that? They don't dare to talk about that.
Okay. Now we have one more story, and I'm thinking, is it justified giving it only 10 minutes, or do you just want to keep on going on this one?
No, we have to talk about the last story because
okay, all right. Okay,
it's a tribute to our brother, yes.
Okay, so we've got one more story before Cesar has to take off, but again, we're going to give it a little bit of a video introduction, so we'll be back in a little bit.
From the pulpit to the pavement, the story of Reverend Jesse Jackson is the story of a movement, one that bridges the civil rights struggles of the 1960s with the political activism of today. Born in Greenville, South Carolina in 1941, Jackson rose from humble beginnings to become one of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s key lieutenants in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. When King was assassinated, Jackson didn't step back, he stepped forward, founding Operation Push in Chicago to promote economic empowerment, education, and self-determination for Black Americans. Through the 1970s and 80s, Reverend Jackson redefined what Black leadership looked like. His Rainbow Push Coalition united people across lines of race, religion, and class, teaching that liberation was not just a Black struggle, but a human one. In 1984 and 1988, Jackson made history with his groundbreaking runs for President of the United States. He didn't just run, he expanded the political imagination of a nation, paving the way for future Black leaders, including Barack Obama. His campaign slogan, "Keep Hope Alive," became a rallying cry for justice and progress. Even now, Reverend Jackson's legacy continues to echo through grassroots movements for voting rights, economic justice, and racial equality. His lifelong work reminds us that liberation isn't a moment, it's a mission. Jesse Jackson didn't only preach hope, he organized it, mobilized it, and turned it into action. His story urges us all to keep hope alive and keep the movement moving forward.
Okay, last conversation piece. Cesar is going to give a few minutes of a tribute to Jesse Jackson and what the future is built on his foundation. Go ahead, Cesar.
Well, Dr. Vibe, the video said it well. Indeed, Reverend Jesse Jackson continued the work of Dr. Martin Luther King. And when I say continue the work, the most known speech of our hero, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, aka I Have a Dream, is remembered for the March on Washington in regards to race, but it was the March to race and against poverty. And this is basically where Jesse Jackson went forward in the same spirit as Our other hero, who was murdered by Chicago police, aka Fred Hampton, as they were seeing a danger of being able to unite across race lines and notably beyond race, addressing socioeconomic issues. Reverend Jesse Jackson basically is the one that truly can be credited with the bigger tent of the Democratic Party in regards to the different identities, um, working whites just as blacks, women, LGBTQ, etc., Latinos, and so forth. But I think it's important for us in remembering Jesse Jackson, despite the controversies, and when someone dies, and many honor him, you have someone trying to find the needle in the haystack. We're trying to find the controversies. We need to remember someone, as I was saying earlier, who stood up, who becomes an ancestor, who truly exemplified what I was saying earlier in terms of for us, by us. And of course, it doesn't mean to be black only. You can make alliances, but you are there to progress, to bring forth the progress of the fight. It is also important for those who may want to bring it up. When someone such as Donald Trump takes a photo with Jesse Jackson at an NAACP award, trying to claim that he was not racist because he supported Jesse Jackson and this and that and that. Well, people change. People change. And, if in the 80s, at first, for many blacks, Trump was not seen as racist, 40 years later, I think, what is it? Studies say over 90% of black people strongly have very strong negative views on Trump, just as Jesse Jackson even changed his views. And last but not least, we have to be able to celebrate ourselves, celebrate our people, those who stand and fight for our cause while they are alive. There would be no Barack Obama without a Jesse Jackson. And again, it's not to say Barack Obama was perfect. Absolutely not. But we cannot dismiss that even beyond Barack Obama, it is, just as with Shirley Chisholm, the first black woman to run for presidential office, it is because of the work, the resilience, and the so many challenges these heroes have faced that we are here, that we can even have this conversation. They push back on the oppression. So when you have someone like Speaker Mike Johnson refusing to lay Jesse Jackson in state in Washington under claims of traditions, it is just a white supremacist hypocrisy. Oh my gosh, I'm having a memory blank. Rosa Parks was laid in state, but who else? Billy Graham was laid in state. Neither of them were government employees, as Mike Johnson justified for not agreeing to search for Jesse Jackson. But it doesn't matter. It is for us. It is for our fight, for our struggle. No, Cesar, I'm on the phone. I'm okay, say hi. Okay.
Bonjour.
Finish in a minute. So it is for us to really continue the fight and to honor those who have stood for us, because it's gonna get worse before it gets better. And in saying this, it was worse in the 60s than today. But for many of us, including us right here, Dr. Vibe, you and I, we were not born in the 60s. We were not born in the 50s or 40s. But we are living in our time, in our realities. And as I often say, we talk about how harsh the winter is, how cold it is. And I like to remind our people, the first Africans to be brought here in bondage with chains on, they didn't have winter jackets. They didn't have.
That's true.
They didn't know where they were going. And arguably, from what science tells us, winters were harsher then.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, those on the Pilgrim almost died. It's
Yeah.
the indigenous people who saved them, and then they did Thanksgiving, aka celebrating the stealing of the land from the indigenous for save them. So Jesse Jackson has to be honored, has to be remembered, just like so many other who stood up for the Black cause. He took the baton from our hero, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And it's not to say he passed the baton to Barack Obama or Reverend Al Sharpton. Truthfully, the baton of Black leaders is passed on to each and every one of us. And as I always remind our people when they ask me, what can I do for the Black cause? It is not about giving a speech or being in front of a camera. It is not about having X amount of followers. It is not about, screaming F the police or no. It starts in the home. Black consciousness, Black pride. My daughter, that everybody just saw, put her to sleep. Her affirmations include, well, I think I've shared that before. I'm intelligent. I'm beautiful. I'm brave. I'm Black and proud. And I love me. It starts in the home with every Black child, every Black woman, every Black man. And you know me, when I say Black, I'm talking midnight dark to mix with blonde hair, green eyes, blue eyes. I'm talking about adopted. I'm talking about that white family that adopted that Black child. I'm talking about those Black parents who may have adopted a white child. It starts in the home. That's the legacy for all of us.
All right. And there's a comment here, RIP, rest in power, Jesse Jackson. So that's what we're going to,
very well said.
That's what we're going to leave off with. And Cesar, as always, I want to say thank you, as always, for taking the most important thing, your time. I know the boss is watching you, so we got to get you off, got to get you out of here quick. So as always, if you want to get in contact with Cesar, email is President Roots and Culture Canada. Email address Cesar Remy Emery. If you want to subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show, and I see there's a lot of people coming on for the first time, please feel free to go to YouTube, hit the subscribe and hit the notification button. Also, like the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook. Well, already on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Substack. Want to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms I'm a part of. Email me, dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. And if you want to find more about myself, just go to the link there, toplink.cc/the drvibeshow.com. And again, if you want to watch replays of this epic conversation, go to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or go to the Dr. Vibe Show website, the drvibeshow.com. As always, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions. Aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy. And remember to give yourself grace. And always make it better. Be well. Keep the faith. Chat soon.